Today we're going to make a coconut cream cake. We're going to start with 2 1/4 cups of cake flour, which if you have watched this show before, you know that I make my own with cornstarch and regular all-purpose flour. The ratio to that is 1 tablespoon for every cup of flour. And then we're going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, a tablespoon of baking powder, and a cup of sugar. And we are going to stir all of that together. Until you get just one consistency throughout the whole thing. Now we're going to mix our wet ingredients. We're going to start with 6 egg whites and 1 whole egg, which I've already put in the bowl together, and stir those around. We're going to add a 1/4 cup of water. And then in here I have a teaspoon of vanilla and a teaspoon of coconut extract so that the flavors could marry. And then last but not least, we have 3/4 of a cup of coconut cream. This is not coconut milk. I've done a coconut cake with coconut milk and the flavor wasn't as strong of coconut as I liked. So I've tried it with coconut, the cream of coconut, and it works much better. And if you use cream of coconut, you will find it with the wine and mixers on that aisle because it's used in pina coladas. I'm going to mix this right up. And then we're going to head on over to the mixer for the next half of adding butter. So our flour mixture is in the mixer, and then we have 12 tablespoons, so it's a stick and a half, of unsalted butter that I cut into tablespoons basically, and then let soften. And we're going to put that inside, add it to our dry mixture, and get a crumbly texture before we add our liquid product. So we just want the butter to kind of incorporate into the flour mixture. You don't want it to completely disintegrate. What we're going to do is it's going to look kind of like sand, really thick chunks of sand. See that consistency? And now we're going to slowly add that coconut cream and egg mixture that we put together earlier. Incorporated, we add the rest. Scraping the bowl, make sure you get all of that, the egg and the coconut flavoring out of there. Alright, it's all mixed up. Now we're going to pour it into our already greased pans. So our cake batter is made. This cake order is for a 6-inch cake. So I have the 2 6-inch rounds that's going to go for the order that is paid for. And then, because there will be extra batter, I greased a small 8-inch cake pan. And what I'll do with that is another episode, but we'll make cake balls. Coconut cream cake balls. So we're going to pour just enough to fill it about halfway. The other important thing with this cake mix as opposed to others, this is a very thick mix. So one of the things that is important is that you make sure that all the air bubbles are out, and so all we do is bang it a little on the table, Shake it and make sure that all of the batter is evenly spread throughout the pan. Otherwise, you're going to get a cake, because it's such a thick mixture, you'll get a cake that is really high on one side and really low on the other. And that's not what we want. So we're going to bake these in a 325-degree oven for 30 to 35 minutes. So it's been just over 30 minutes, and our cakes are done. We put a toothpick in the middle, comes out clean. You want to make sure you do it with both, otherwise it'll fall in the middle and doesn't make for a yummy cake. Okay, we're going to toast some coconut for our coconut cake. Most people do this in the oven. I prefer to do it on the stove because I can watch it and monitor it and I don't burn it this way. So I have some shredded sweetened coconut. I have my flame on medium and a non-stick pan. We're just going to pour it in. And I have just a 14-ounce bag because I'll do it all if all else fails. You can keep toasted coconut for a couple months. And I know I have a German chocolate cake to make very soon, and it will come in handy. So if I don't use it all to decorate the cake, I can always keep it and use it for something else. So we're just going to stir it around a little, let it heat up, and let it turn that nice golden brown. Now the reason that we toast coconut for the coconut cake is it brings, first of all, it makes it pretty because it brings that caramel color to it. And also because it brings a nutty flavor to the coconut, so it's not a straight sweet coconut flavor. All right, we're going to keep doing this for the next probably 15 to 20 minutes. Now that we've got that golden color to the coconut, we're going to turn the heat off and let it sit to cool so that we can use it to decorate. The other thing you want to do is put it into a different bowl so that it stops cooking. If we leave it in this hot pan, it's going to continue to cook. We're going to start the icing for our coconut cake. First thing we do is we take 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, a teaspoon of coconut extract, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a pinch of salt. And we're going to stir this up just a little, and then we're going to let the salt dissolve while we cream the butter and the powdered sugar. I have a stick and a half or 12 tablespoons of butter. I'm unsalted but soft here in my mixer. I'm going to add to it a 1/4 cup of cream of coconut, and we're going to mix those two together until they are homogenized, one texture together. And we use the cream of coconut to give that really rich coconut flavor. We also use heavy cream. You can use coconut milk, you just won't get the fluffiness of the frosting. Alright, and to that mixture, we're going to add 3 cups of powdered sugar. Now I have 3.5 cups here, just in case I need some extra at the end, in case it's not the right consistency. Those are my 3 cups. And as we're going to start off low, just to get the ingredients combined, and then we're going to speed up the mixer. But if we started off at the highest level, powdered sugar comes flying out and makes a huge mess everywhere. Right. And remember that milk mixture from earlier, that heavy cream, the salt, the extracts. We're going to add that in here now. And then mix it together again. Now if you look in, you can see that when you pull the mixer blade up, the the peaks don't stay in the icing, that means it's going to be really difficult for it to stick onto the cake, which is why I have just a little bit of extra powdered sugar. And I'm going to add this a little bit at a time to get to the texture I want, where there's those stiff peaks. There it is. So this is a problem we have in the South that, from what I've gathered, you don't have up north. But because it is so warm here, butter softens and gets so almost liquidy that we have to add more powdered sugar. It's just something I've learned over the time, and it's because it's warm here. Now, if you are like my mother and you keep your house at 68 degrees, you should have no problem. But I freeze. I cook in long sleeves and sweatpants at her house. All right, we're going to come over and start icing the cake. Okay, our icing is done. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take just a tad bit of the icing and we are going to smear it on our cake plate. This is going to make sure that the bottom cake layer does not slide off of the cake or slide around while you're trying to mix or trying to ice. What is going to happen is that icing is going to harden and the cake will stick to the cake plate, which is good. Otherwise we come up with a mess. All right. And these are our beautiful coconut cakes from last night that we made. And we put the first layer down and we scoop out a little bit of icing. And take a small spatula and spread it around, making sure that you have... Now I put mine on a Lazy Susan and twist it around while I'm working to make sure it's even. But you guys can do it however you want, whatever works for you. Okay. Now we're going to take our second one. One of the things I really like about coconut cake is we don't have to wait in between layers like we normally do for the icing to harden in the middle and everything to come together, and we get to dirty ice and then decorate, because the decoration is very simple. It is just toasted coconut all the way around. So I like things that are simple, and we don't have to make it look perfect, which is another thing that's really good for a last minute dessert. So we're just going to spread around that icing. Make sure you get it even, just an even layer. And it doesn't have to be a thick layer, because you don't want it to be too sweet. Now you can choose to just, decorate in roses, pipettes, do whatever you want around the sides of a coconut cream cake. And you can just do frosting. I like the added texture of the toasted coconut and the nutty flavor of it. But you don't need it. It's not one of those, it doesn't taste right without it kind of things. So you see the holes there in the middle, we're just going to patch them up like this with icing all the way around. And then we're going to take that toasted coconut that we have over here, and with your hands, while the icing is still wet, before you've had a chance to put it in the refrigerator and let it dry, you're going to put toasted coconut along the sides. And some of it will fall down. And like I said, we made extras just in case, and so that we could have extra later on. Toasted coconut will keep for quite a while. So we just want to make sure that we get toasted coconut all the way around, on the top, on the sides. This way you get some texture in your cake as well as the flavor. So we have covered every inch of this cake in toasted coconut. Ooh, no, we have not. Alright, now we've covered every inch. Alright, so we're going to take the leftovers, put them back in our bowl, because we will be using those again. Probably to make German chocolate cake and coconut cream cake balls. So, the other thing we're going to do is dust off a little bit that's hanging around. You can leave some and just kind of tighten it up, make it look pretty. And then we're going to refrigerate this overnight, and then my husband will deliver tomorrow.